In 1985, if you were lucky enough to get your hands on a BMW E30i, you received this, the owner's handbook supplement. Because the car was based on the 323, this covered all the deviations from the standard car. And on the first page, you received a note from BMW. Congratulations on taking delivery of your new BMW 333i. In choosing a BMW 333i, you, as a customer, seem to be an experienced and technically interested automobile fan. Well, that sounds about right. You may have heard of the 333i, you may have heard of the legend, you may have never seen one, and so I'm so glad to bring this to you on our YouTube channel. This is one of the rarest cars in the world. BMW South Africa only ever made 210 of these. So the BMW 333i, an absolute legend in South Africa, built for homologation for racing, and as soon as they built it and put it on sale, the race series that it was homologated for was cancelled, and so it never really got to race, and those 210 examples were sold to private buyers. And they stuck the 3.2 litre engine from the BMW 733 in here, and that caused some problems because, well, yeah, it was quite a lot bigger than the standard 323 engine, and so they had to do things like delete the cooling fan, for instance, completely redo the manifold, and interestingly, there wasn't enough space for power steering and aircon, so you had to choose one. So this particular car has aircon and no power steering, which I think is the right way to go, because having no power steering puts all the feel through the wheel, and it really does feel particularly good. There's a lot of feedback coming through here. So, what's it like to drive? Alrighty, let's open her up. Second gear, 5,500. The red line is 6,300. Getting used to this dogleg box, up into fourth at the top of the box, which is so weird. There comes some nice fast corners. At lowered ride height, you can really feel it. I mean, this was such a great chassis. BMW used this chassis to pretty much change the world. They built the E30 M3 on this. Oh, it's lovely. It feels so planted, and interestingly, it's on pretty skinny tires, 195s, 16-inch, 195 50s. But it feels like there's a lot of traction. It's really, really planted. Well, first of all, the first thing you've got to get used to is the fact that it has a dogleg gearbox. And if you're not familiar with that, basically the huge difference between a dogleg and a standard gearbox is that first gear is down and to the left, and second is then up. So everything is reversed. So if you were in a normal car, obviously first up here, down into second, up into third. This is first down here, up into second, down into third. And in terms of the gearing itself, it's a lot taller than I was expecting. So for instance, if I go down into third here, which is still pretty weird, and the gates between third and fifth are super, super close. You have to be quite careful when you're going down into third. Anyway, so let's ring the third gear out here. Wow, that's nice shove. All 285 Newton meters, 6,000 RPM, 140 k's an hour up into fourth. So in third, you're getting to 140. That's pretty tall gearing. So this actually doesn't feel like an out-and-out sports car, I must be honest. And in this modern age when we've got used to 8 ratios and 7 ratios and, you know, dual clutch gearboxes, it actually feels a little bit more like a GT car, which is really quite interesting. And then there's the sound. So they pulled this engine out of a 7 Series, and the whole point of a 7 Series, of course, is that it's luxury motoring. It's very quiet and very civilized, and so you can't actually really hear the engine. It's a particularly quiet engine actually. So all the noise sort of comes from the exhaust, and it's this sort of wonderfully bassy sound. Alpina worked on the branches and worked on the flow back to the back box, and it's got this particularly low grumble to it, which I really like, but it's still got that sort of lusty BMW 6 Series sound to it as well. That 4th gear pickup, look at that! So how did this car stack up against the M3 in terms of power output? So you've got an extra litre of displacement here, 3.2 to the M3's 2.3. Closest makes a difference to a litre. So in the M3 you would have received 158 kilowatts and 230 newton meters. It was quite light on torque. And in this car, because of the larger displacement, you would expect more torque, and it did have. So it had a bit less power at 145, but it had way more torque, 285 newtons in here, good 55 more than the M3. And so it wasn't much slower than the M3 at all, even though it was a little bit heavier. The M3 would do 0 to 100 in about 6.7 seconds, whereas this would do it in about 7.2. And so for its time, this was a particularly fast car. I mean, we're talking 1985 here. That's when I was born. That's good 36 years ago, 35, 36 years ago. And just out of interest, a bit of trivia to point out how much the world has moved on, the world of motoring. The Polo GTI has more power and torque than this car. Look, it is turbocharged, but still. Let's maybe we'll edit that part out. You know, it's not nice. It's not a nice piece of trivia. Sorry about that. I think what I'm loving about this car is that BMW made enough changes in here to make this feel special. So different steering wheel, quite thin rimmed, lovely leather stitching on it, little Alpina sign in front of me on the instrument cluster. The needles on the dials are a very bright sort of day glow orange, actually probably the henna red of the time. The gear knob features those lovely M racing stripes as well. I mean, this car it's been well maintained. It really has. This particular example has done 94,000 Ks, which is quite a lot, but I mean, yeah, for an engine like this, it's basically just been run in. So if you're familiar with the South African motoring landscape, you will know that the box-shaped Beamer, the E30, has a particularly dear place in the heart of South Africans. It has a nickname. It's called the Gearshift, which means the very fast. And we're very privileged at Cars.co.za to own 2 of them. But this is even rarer. This is even more special. This is even faster with a larger engine. So what should we call this? The ultimate Gearshift, the ultimate very fast. It needs its own name. We need a nickname here. Look, let me say this up front. The E30 BMW holds a special place in my heart in particular. It was my first car. My dad handed me down his old E30 320i, 4-door manual gearbox. It had that lovely 2-litre 6-cylinder motor. And unfortunately, I gave it back to my dad to use, and he wrote it off. And I sold it for 7,000 Rand to a scrap dealer called Valentino. But anyway, that's a story for a different day. And so every time I get to drive a special E30, a special Gearshift, it is a very emotional moment. And even with my bias aside, I'm happy to report to you that this car lives up to its reputation. It lives up to the myth. It lives up to the legend. They really knocked it out of the park with this one. And it also reflects how innovative the South African motoring world was. Oh, I absolutely love this thing. Thanks very much for watching. If you've just watched this video but you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, you absolutely should do that immediately right now. Click the subscribe button. It's a good idea for a bunch of reasons which I actually don't have really a lot of time to go into, but it's good. It's a good idea. Excellent. Thanks for watching. I said that already.